As you can see in your program, and perhaps you know, Elizabeth mentioned last week, this month we are celebrating Fred Wooden's 10th anniversary as senior minister at Fountain Street Church. My name is Steve Crandall. I have been a member of this church all my life, and I was honored to be asked to share some thoughts about Fred's ministry and what it has meant to me and perhaps many of us during this time. I want to talk about three ideas that have struck me. First, I've always been impressed with the commitment Fred has to educate those in this church. He believes that just claiming to be liberal in our religious thinking isn't nearly enough. We need to know why we would think this way, the foundation, the basis of it. We have to know what we are talking about. We need to be able to explain it to others. He believes we can't begin to change the world until we know how the world is now, and from what will we change. So he has encouraged us to know our religious thinking and literature, and to truly become students to better learn the basis of our beliefs. His recent series about Fountain Street's history, our past ministers and times, was fascinating to me. I know to many of you as well. But it wasn't just a chronology. He held the mirror up to us to challenge our assumptions and recollections about this place and how this fits with today. So yes, he is a minister, but he has a lot of professor in him too, and we are richer for it. Second, you see in our program today some of the highlights of Fred's contribution to social justice in our community. Fountain Street has long been attracted to this kind of cause, a call to social action and to voice the outrage of injustice in our society. And there are so many people in our church that participate in supporting this cause in many ways. But I also want to say something else. There's another part of this church community that I characterize as cool intellectualism. This is the observing, but not the participating. This is the consideration of what is presented on, say, a Sunday morning, a judgment of its value, and then home for the afternoon. So, for instance, when faced with the notion that we should support marital rights, many of us, I dare say most of us, would say we agree with this. It is only just to do so. But if asked, well, what about going to Rosa Parks Circle once a month and showing the support, demonstrate our agreement? You mean physically actually go there without other people outside in the afternoon? But Fred goes. More than any other minister that I can recall in our history, Fred walks the talk. He doesn't just preach about racial injustice from the pulpit. He goes and chairs the Urban League. Some have felt that giving our morning offering to the community is misguided. We need these funds for us. But what is the purpose of us? These actions and others have put the institution of Fountain Street Church in the center of these causes, where only individual members were before. And finally, let me just mention the obvious. This is not an easy place to lead. We think fairly highly of ourselves. We often think the job of senior minister here would be the plum job any minister with a liberal persuasion would covet. But if I were a minister with the potential of coming here, I'd have to ask, why would I ever want a job like this? No denominational or institutional safety net. We are all we have. No outside determination of how we should be. Only we can direct us. And we all have our own personal definition of how that should be. And people feel strongly about their view because it is hard for folks to separate their personal needs from the needs of the overall church. And despite our declaration of the liberal view, many of us have a distinct rigidity in our beliefs of how we should be and what should happen. So it is like herding cats. And to do it for 10 years is exhausting and nonstop. And yet Fred has been able to ride these waves and has implemented program and change that we wouldn't have seen without him, not only here, but in action and visibility in the community. So we thank you, Fred, for your commitment and contribution. We are much better for it.
Please join me in the responsive reading. Is any one of us in trouble? Or is it I who suffers in isolation this day?
May I be open to allow another to gently enter my pain.
There are many just like us, bound and imprisoned, in some way yet open to a hopeful sign.
Let us then be makers of a sanctuary dedicated to the work of love.
Good morning. My name is Amy Brar. I'm the program director at CCOM. Thank you very much for having me here today. Your congregation has been very supportive of our work at CCOM, and CCOM stands for South End Community Outreach Ministries. And I feel very blessed to have the opportunity to come here today to share with you what CCOM does in our community. CCOM is a key resource center for a geographical area in Grand Rapids. Anyone living between 131 on the west to Patterson Street on the east, 28th Street on the south, and Hall Street on the north, and who meets income requirements can come to CCOM for food. This year, we've provided more than 23,000 services. That includes food services and diapers to families living within these boundaries. An average of 40 families per day come to us for food. These numbers can be quite daunting, but are a real indicator of the food insecurity within our community. We are thankful for the churches who support us with food drives or funding that help keep our pantry shelves full. We rely on quarterly deliveries of governmental commodities and are always working to build relationships with grocery stores and farmers in the area. Our purchases from Feeding America round out our food procurements. We are also working to make everything in our pantry to be healthy, so increasing fresh fruits and vegetables and trying to remove the items that are not so healthy. Our tagline at CCOM is helping today, building hope for tomorrow. But building hope, changing patterns, moving families out from needing to rely on the pantry is the harder work. In January of 2013, we opened Little Steps at CCOM, which is a free preschool program for 3- and 4-year-old children in our neighborhood through Early Learning Neighborhood Collaborative. We work to prepare our 32 preschoolers to be ready for kindergarten, to be ready to learn, to be ready to succeed. We are very proud that our preschool program is only one of 2 programs in Kent County that was rated at 5 stars by Great Start to Quality. Our Pride for Parents program allows parents to volunteer 10 hours per child in our building or at a local school in our neighborhood and earn $80 in Christmas gift credit for the Christmas season. Parents choose the gifts or the gift cards that they want so that they can shop for the exact gift items. This is not a handout. These gifts were earned by the parents doing those volunteer hours. Last Christmas, we provided funding and gifts for 85 children. We hope to be able to service 120 children this year. This fall, we also began a Beads of Hope program, working with local women to make jewelry and sell it at craft shows at our CCOM building and online. The women keep 75% of the sales, and the remainder goes back into the business to be able to purchase supplies. This program allows the women in our group to earn extra income to be able to contribute to their families. And we have our Beads of Hope group in the social hall, and they have some items available for sale today, and hopefully the next couple of Sundays we'll be able to be here. And they also have some of their work exhibited in the chapel. CCOM is also a healthy living hub for the YMCA. They come and provide free exercise classes for our neighborhood, and that's another step towards healthy living. We believe at CCOM that we are called to love our neighbor, to treat all with compassion and dignity, and to reach out to give a hand up to those who come to us. Thank you again for all that you do and for helping us to support our CCOM neighbors.
You to Bart Sumner this morning, who will be singing the part of Herod Antipas. Those of you who grew up in religious tradition would recognize Herod as the rather cruel leader of the area known as Galilee. And at this point in our service, I want to ask you to kind of shift gears. Some of you may have chosen to pick up a small golden safety pin with a red glass bead on it as you came in this morning. If not, no problem. There are plenty of extras on our table here. Amy's preschool group is the community that made the multicolored beads which were strung on our prayer bead strand this week. To that this week we will add the opened safety pins. I want to point to a connection here which will connect directly to the music that Bart and Wright and Karen Dunham and Chad Hausman are going to offer. It's a piece of music that may sound too vaudevillian for church, something only Fountain Street can probably pull off. But there is a point, as is there always a point on Sunday morning, of seeking a deeper meaning and value in things which might otherwise appear purely secular. This is a song sung by the cruel leader who had Jesus before him and said, "Make me a miracle, entertain me." And it is that same metaphor between what Herod demands of Jesus that I would suggest to you the culture is demanding of us, one and all. Entertain us. Show us how beautiful, rich, fabulous you are, and we shall measure your worth by it. The safety pin that you may hold in your hand now is an invitation to see the paradox of what Herod demands, but what a life rich in spiritual religious opportunity would offer. I choose not to entertain you to justify my being. I choose to be in front of you and willing to open myself as you might open a safety pin. We'll be adding that safety pin to our prayer bead strand, but for now I welcome you to feel the power of this piece of music and its connection to what the culture seems to be asking all of us. Perform for me.
Jesus, I am overjoyed to meet you face to face. You've been making quite a name all around the place. Healing cripples, raising from the dead. And now I understand you're God. At least that's what you've said. So you are the Christ, you're the great Jesus Christ. Prove to me that you're divine. Change my water into wine, that's all you need to. And I'll know it's all true. Come on, King of the Jews. Jesus, you just won't believe the hit you've made around here. You are all we talk about, the wonder of the year. How what a pity if it's all a lie. Still, I'm sure that you can rock the cynics if you try.
They say everything can be replaced. They say every distance is not near. But I remember every face of every man who put me here. They say every man needs protection. They say every man must fall. Yet I swear I see my reflection somewhere so high above this wall. And I see my light still shining from the west down to the east. Any day now, any day now, I shall be released. Any day now, any day now, I shall be released. Now he understands a man in this lonely crowd, a man who swears he's not to blame, and all day long I hear him shouting so loud, just crying out that he was afraid. Still shining from the west down to the east. Any day now, any day now, I shall be released. Any day now, any day now, I shall be released.
We are rich in many ways, are we not? Fortunate for us, fortunate for everyone. To awaken our minds and leaven our hearts, some words, first from the lectionary shared in many Christian churches. In the first letter that Paul wrote to the Christians in Corinth, there are these marvelous words. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? And Langston Hughes, this short poem. Gather up in the arms of your pity the sick, the depraved, the desperate, the tired, all the scum of our weary city. Gather up in the arms of your pity, gather up in the arms of your love, those who expect no love from above. During the third week of February in 1945, Allied forces landed on Corregidor in the Philippines for the first time since being driven out 3 years before. That same week, Franklin Roosevelt and Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin met in Yalta to decide what to do with Europe, setting the stage for the Cold War. Brotherhood Day was observed for the first time in the United States, and Duncan Littlefair preached the third in his first Lenten series on the nature of God. As he concluded his remarks that day, he said, quote, "There is no need that God be outside of nature in order to be worthwhile. There is no need that God be something apart from the world." While I have not concluded yet in my series that God does or even can exist, I am unfolding my thoughts about this universal notion. Duncan's words are telling because 70 years later I am saying essentially the same thing. Maybe we still haven't quite learned it, I guess. Any God worth believing shares the reality we inhabit. It is not out there beyond it, wholly other, as we sometimes hear it said. Thanks to science and common sense, when we apply Occam's razor that holds that the simplest answer that fits the circumstances is more likely to be true than a more complex answer, we can see that there is no need for a God to run the show, no need for a God to keep it together, no need for a God who is a magician who pulls the strings and performs magical illusions, walking across swimming pools or other such things, in order to explain our lives or even the existence of evil. We may wish there was such a God. It would be far more convenient in many ways, but there is no need for one. Even so, I have great respect for the Abrahamic faiths when they concluded so many centuries ago that there was only one God, because that meant that this wild world we live in, earth, sun, moon, and stars, however different and disparate, however crazy and misunderstood, was essentially one thing, the creation of a single God. In those long ago days, the unity of reality was expressed by saying God made all of it and controls all of it. But we have seen, if you've been here for the last couple of weeks, that the need to have an omnipotent God and a determined universe really are at loggerheads with our common sense and with common morality. Tempting as it might be, it becomes a spiritual tourniquet that severs the mind from facts and forces us to justify the existence of a God rather than needing one, and forcing us to justify ourselves when the facts do not line up with our transcendental beliefs. But if believing in an omnipotent God is not a good idea, that leaves us still in search of that reason why life matters, which is where I started in the first place. We all want to believe this, that my life, your life, that existence itself has value. But if there's no God out there creating it and making it happen, then what are we going to say matters? How can we come up with a reason? And ironically, it is a pre-Socratic philosopher from Greece who holds the key. Heraclitus famously said you can never step into the same river twice. You understand what he means. If you step in the same river twice, it's new water. It keeps moving. You can't step into the same moment twice. Change is the one universal law that he could discern. This metaphor, like all symbols, has a lot more to say if you ponder it. If the river is never exactly the same, what with water always flowing and taking things with it, it still remains a river, not different rivers in a sense. There is a unity. You can recognize it. The river Grand is right over there. The water in it changes from moment to moment, but it is still the Grand River. It is one thing. The Mississippi, the Nile, the Amazon are rivers that we can point to even as the waters in them change constantly. There is a unity of form and function that gives all of its fluid and changing parts a kind of coherence. We can point to it. We can name it. Last week I said that we do not need a universe that is ordered, that is to say, designed by an outside force, but we do want one that is orderly, that behaves, that we can look at and predict with some measure of success. We don't need our universe controlled, but we would like it to hold together, to be cohesive and coherent. A river is a perfect example of this phenomenon. Its very existence depends on things changing and fluidity. Unless the water flows, it is not a river, it's just a ditch. Perhaps we should think of reality in the largest sense as a river, cohesive and coherent because it is moving. But if that's true, then like a river, it would have to be moving in the same direction. The River Grande is not a large puddle. It goes to the Great Lakes. Likewise, the Nile flows into the Mediterranean. The question is reality moving in a common direction? Well, physically, we could say yes. It moves through time and space. The Abrahamic religions sensed that, perhaps, and imagined that there would be a final judgment day, a destination if there ever was one. We could invert it, though, and say everything started with the Big Bang. We may not be headed in the same direction, but we all came from the same direction. One of my favorite scholars, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, a 20th century Jesuit priest who was a paleontologist, decided that evolution was evidence that God was pushing the universe to completion, to what he called the omega point, a moment in the future of ultimate complexity and ultimate consciousness. This weekend, yesterday in particular, the observance of the 50th anniversary of the Selma March reminded me, as I mentioned last week and again this week, of Dr. King's metaphor of all of us being part of a single garment of destiny. And the word destiny has a destination attached. I'm not sure any one of them are right, but we all have this sense or this hope that there is some direction to reality, something we sense in that hunch that life matters. So let's go back to the image of the river. What makes a river flow? I'm being very straightforward now, nothing symbolic or fancy. Gravity. The water starts above and it trickles down lower. It seeks its own level, as we say. Because of gravity, water flows downhill. What keeps a river from being a giant puddle is that it heads in a particular direction through a pathway that would drive it down to sea level. Out there in the galactic reaches of the universe, the world of creation and change is governed by gravity, isn't it? Having described in my last sermon a freedom, a creativity that's built into nature, into reality itself, found in the subatomic particles of Werner Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, but also in the way microbes evolve and animals with their raw emotions and humans with their deliberations. I'm turning to the other side of reality, not the creative centrifugal part, but the cohesive centripetal part. It is the balance of these two forces in reality, the creative and expansive and the attractive and contracting, that give us the universe we live in and give us a sense of direction. Every atomic particle has some mass, very, very small. But when they stick together, they accumulate, don't they, into things like atoms and molecules, and eventually into planets and stars, and those things create literally dents in space-time that attract other things to them. This sounds very cosmic, but how does that work in our lives? Well, we're not actually gravitational ourselves in the kind of astronomic sense, but events in the past shape the present and the future, don't they? They are connected. They create valleys through which we move. I recently took a swab on my cheek or whatever it was and sent in to get my ancestral DNA analyzed. Now, you don't get much whiter than me. I came back 98% Northern European and Anglo-Saxon. No surprise there. But here's the surprise. I am 1% Jewish and 1% Iraqi. There's a little bit of North African thrown in there too. That was a surprise, a delightful surprise, because everyone wants a little salt in their meal, don't you? We all don't want to be the same flavor. But my point is, who I am today was shaped by people I do not know and who do not know me, who through their loves and lives coupled and created more people. And I am the person I am because some person in Turkmenistan or Iraq, some Jewish person in Poland, some North African in Morocco, along with all the Germans and Anglo-Saxons, somehow formed a river, and I was born of all of that. And now I have 2 sons mixed with the ancestry of my wife, so that while all of these are free choices, they are not unlimited choices. They have formed a pathway through which I have moved. We talk about family trees, but we should really talk about family rivers. How the genes flow into you and through you, shaping who you are, giving you your face, your voice, your sense of self. Though cosmic gravity has little to do with our lives, there is a tendency in our lives for things to connect. And those connections, those choices, those happenstances shape us the same way gravity draws planets and stars into orbits and spirals and galaxies. Here's my point today. Here's the part I want you to take away. What holds the universe together physically is what holds us together spiritually. If the freedom and creativity of the universe that creates and creates again stars and planets and life itself, that exists in us as this free will that creates music, that arranges flowers, that propels the words out of my mouth and into your. That freedom is built into reality. That I have already told you. Here's the other part. So is the gravity. If freedom and creativity come out of us as free will, gravity comes out of us as love. You remember the song Feelings? Some of you are old enough to remember that. It's kind of hokey. But we use the word feelings to mean emotions, right? Well, a great philosopher, Alfred North Whitehead, at some point observed that the sense of feeling is in fact both an emotion and a sensation. Do you ever feel fear? Is it in your head? No, you feel it in your gut. When you feel love, it's not just a thought in your head, it's a palpitation in your heart. Emotions are sensations. I'm putting it in front of you today that whenever we are connected to something, something we fear, something we love, something we want, something that bothers us, we are literally sensing it with our bodies. It is not a thought, it's a sensation. They really are feelings. And this is something that other creatures have. The geranium literally faces the sun if it has enough time. It can feel the warmth of the sun, and it turns, not with its head, it's in its nature to do that. The fox knows to hunt the rabbit and not the dog. We can paint pictures and fall in love. It's only a matter of degree, not of kind. What matters here is that emotions, feelings, come from sensations of other things. When we are tugged by the garment of destiny, we literally feel it. We are touched in the literal and figurative sense. At the very most basic level, it's the little magnetic forces, the electrical charges, and the chemical bonds that hold together atoms and molecules. We can reflect upon our feelings, other things cannot. But when we act on a feeling, when our sensations are brought to mind, when we respond to it consciously, I think of this passage from an essay called Riding the F Train, written in the New Yorker. The author writes, "Once a man sang the words of the Lord's Prayer to a mournful, syncopated tune, and he fitted the mood of the morning so exactly that when he asked for money at the end of the ride, we all reached for our wallets and purses as if he'd pulled a gun." Sometimes a word, a gesture, a moment can so speak to us, so open us up that we feel deeply, deeply connected. Did the music speak to you? Does the art captivate you? The feeling I'm looking for is the word compassion. To suffer with, to feel the pain of the other, as the poem from Langston Hughes suggests. In the Upasaka Sutra, it is said of the Buddha that the enlightened one, because he saw humanity drowning, was moved to compassion. When we feel this deep response to the presence of another person, compassion or empathy, that is what love is about. An attraction, a connection so deep that we cannot find words, but we cannot ignore it. If the human form of universal creativity is thought, the human expression of universal gravity is love. When we feel compassion, deep connection, we find ourselves cherishing the connection and what it brings us. What is love, we ask, and it's very simple, but a caring, a valuing sensation that acknowledges that something out there is real and that we are connected to it. It is the human response to something of profound value outside of ourselves. Love is what connects us to the deep truth. The deep truth we hope is out there. Freedom of thought and depth of feeling in some ways are opposing forces. One allows for change and novelty and movement. The other attracts and holds and connects. As I said, one is centrifugal, flowing away from the center. The other is centripetal, pulling back toward the center. Together they sustain reality itself. Gravity and creativity are basic forces that keep electrons flying around protons, planets around suns, and everything in between. We, in our lives, experience them as love and truth. They create us and hold us together in a web of relationships, turning individual moments and individual lives from drops of water into streams and rivers, threads and garments of destiny. So if there is one truth in the universe, there is also one love. Notwithstanding our many individual loves and our longings, these are but fragments of a larger fabric of love. The way that all of our truths are but fragments of a larger fabric of truth. There can only be one love and one truth in this reality. We take part in it, we participate in it, but we don't own it. In fact, it owns us. Now, you may think, oh, animals and plants don't love. If you own a pet, you know I am right. And we also know that birds and penguins mate for life, the dogs mourn. If we go down the complexity ladder, there are ants caring for other young ants. There are flowers that attract insects to propagate. We know instinctively or by nature that we are not separate from the rest of reality, but deeply connected to it. This more than suggests that our desire to find value in life is not just about human value, but all value, all things. Much as we have to accept that other creatures have a degree of free will, we're going to have to admit that other creatures also know love and offer it as well. Freedom and feeling are not owned, like I said, but found throughout the universe. Truth and love are not things we humans create. It's what the universe does, and we get to enjoy. One truth, one love. That's the nature of reality. I call this the great surmise, because everything in liberal religion comes after this. I cannot prove it the way science does, but I don't have to. It is a reasonable thought, one you can hold in your head without denying a single fact, without believing in anything so preposterous people would laugh. I find no better premise or nobler one, and we all know there are many worse. This is our foundation. One truth, one love. On this, we build the house of prayer for all people. I'll see you in 2 weeks to tell you more about it. May the words of my mouth and meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, thou who art my rock and my Redeemer.
May it be that you go into a world of great need and find there a place where you may allow the healing to start. We welcome you to stay afterwards, to bring with you, if you've taken one already, the small safety pin with the red glass bead. To take great care as you bring it forward. We're working with our Laugh Fest set here. You'll have to both come in and out through the stairs on the side, coming around to the front. As you come before the strand of beads, I welcome you to carefully open that safety pin and literally pierce the common strand, something which we have bound our names into with ash and then symbolically graced with beads symbolizing spiritual opportunity. Today, we ritually add to the art piece a willingness to open ourselves, giving ourselves literally into the strand as a part of Fountain Street and its community gathered one for the other. Go in peace. If you do not have a safety pin, there are plenty extra up front. We'll see you again soon, friends. Be well.